Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Star Citizen Live. What are we calling this one? Chasing Racing. I just made that up. I'm your host, Jared Huckabee, and if you've never seen Star Citizen Live before, it's where we take about an hour at the end of our week and we hang out with our developers, our team members, the folks who make Star Citizen and Squadron 42 possible. Joining us on the show this week, we have a cavalcade, a lovely bouquet of different developers in different fields, but we'll get to that in just a minute. Earlier in the week, if you haven't checked it out, Inside Star Citizen dropped yesterday with a look at some of the embedded QA team members and their work on some of the locations that are currently in testing and being developed for Star Citizen, including the updated New Babbage Convention Center, which has a name that I can't think about, coming in the upcoming Alpha 3.17.4 as part of next week's Intergalactic Aerospace Expo. The whopping new 35 derelict outposts that are being scattered throughout the Stanton system in the upcoming Alpha 3.18, scheduled for this December. And then, of course, a brief look at the outlaw space stations that have been a big part of the upcoming Journey to 4.0 that we hope to have in your hands next year. We also introduced the idea of adding a whole bunch of community racetracks to Alpha 3.18. The delay for Alpha 3.18 due mostly to the ongoing work with Precision Entity Streaming and getting an entirely new foundation to the Precision Universe done in one patch, because hey, has allowed certain teams, certain content teams, the opportunity to take short sprints and add additional content wherever possible. And members of our friends at Turbulent, as well as the EU Sandbox 1 team here in Montreal, have taken the opportunity to add 6, or at least 6, we'll find out if that's the total amount, brand new racetracks to the Precision Universe, all based on, or at least some based in part, on tracks that have been created by members of the community. So we checked that out. We showcased 3 of them on Inside Star Citizen yesterday. There was the Yila racetrack through the asteroid fields around Grimhex. There was the Euterpe a racetrack down on the surface of that moon, and I think I'm saying that correctly. We had quite an internal debate on how to say Euterpe when we were filming, and I saw one person in the comments ask if I intentionally say it different than any of the other developers just to mess with people, and the answer is yes. And then the third racetrack on Area 18 on the planet ArcCorp. On today's show, we are going to explore 3 additional racetracks that are coming to Alpha 3.18, made by our friends at Turbulent. And joining us on the show to help discuss that today is Nemanja from Turbulent. Nemanja, are you there?
Yes, I am here. How's it going?
Good. Welcome to being our very first remote guest on the new format, Star Citizen Live. You can see and hear me okay?
Yeah, everything's perfect on my side.
How many fingers am I holding up?
Well, I'm not watching Twitch right now, so I don't see how many fingers.
Oh, you can't see me. Oh, we didn't do that. That was my bad. It was 3. All right. So, Nemanja, joining us on the show this week, we also have 2 members of our esteemed audio team who are going to fill in the back half. But since they were there, and rather than have them sit quietly, we're going to let them join in the conversation. We've got Graham and Corrington from the Manchester audio team. How you guys doing?
We're doing good. Yeah. End of another week.
Yeah. You excited to see some community racetracks?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Nemanja, you can see and hear them correctly?
I can see and hear them, and if they have any questions, feedback regarding the racetracks, they're welcome to throw it in.
Okay. This is a heck of a technical feat, and a big shout out to Tom and Peter behind the scenes for making this possible today. All right, so Nemanja, let's just start off with some simple stuff, some setting the stage. Why add 6 new racetracks to the Precision Universe in 3.18?
That's a good question. We should ask that one to Todd, because he took us by surprise too when he asked us to do that. But our goal is always to add more gameplay that's fun and quickly for the players. This was a good onboarding task also for one of our new level designers. It was a good first step toward implementing more racing into the universe. It's definitely a step in the right direction. So, I mean, I'm excited to see what's going to be coming in the future for racing. But for now, 6 racetracks, it was, I think this was a pretty easy win for all the teams that worked on this. And yeah, it was just fun to make, and hopefully it's going to be fun to play.
Cool. So again, for folks who maybe haven't seen yesterday's Inside Star Citizen, you're going to want to check that out to see a pretty detailed look at the racetracks on Yila, Euterpe, and ArcCorp. Today, we're going to take a look at 3 new racetracks, and we're just going to jump right into it here. The first racetrack that we're going to look at and discuss is on Daymar. So, Tom, why don't we go ahead and start the Daymar city clip, and let's just talk it through. Let's take our first look at the new Daymar racetrack. So, Nemanja, what are we looking at here?
So this is going to be a brand new racetrack. So this is not one of the community racetracks that we picked off. This is a new one. It's right next to the garden on Daymar. They have a pretty cool range of mountains and canyons that are like one next to another. And we decided to make a racetrack there for multiple reasons. 1, because it's close to a QT point. 2, because we already have these natural canyon formations for players to race in. It's also, it reminds us a lot of the Snake Pit racetrack. So in that regards, it's going to be very familiar to the players. There's very similar turns and curves. The atmosphere is the same. So yeah, it's going to be familiar for the racers, but there's also some new parts that are like closer to mountains where we added a little bit of verticality. We added those underpasses under the rocks, which are very memorable. So we just took Snake Pit and basically brought it to the next level. So this is like the evolution of racing. It looks better, it feels better, it's beautiful. We had a lot of artists work on this. Like Louis Max, he did a great job art-wise, and it really shows like in the minor details. When you get closer to the ground on the human scale, there's a lot more detail. We have better landmarks. It's just a great fun track to race in.
Wow, when you say this is the upgrade to Snake Pit still exists. This isn't.
Yeah, we've actually added the missions on Snake Pit too. So the time trials are going to be available on Snake Pit. We had to update the visuals of Snake Pit a little bit also to accommodate for the checkpoints. But the golden path of Snake Pit is still the same. We just had to add some visuals for a few extra checkpoints to make sure that people can't skip above the canyons.
Gotcha. So we added Snake Pit. I don't even remember which patch it was now. 3.17.2? 1?
Yeah.
Okay. So that when we added that, it didn't have formal in-game check marks, did it? Checkpoints?
No, it didn't. So this is brand new. So MFT team worked on those, and they're actually a lot better than I expected. So yeah, kudos to them.
All right, so walk me through the loop here. Players are going to open up their Moby Glass. There's going to be a mission available to them. How does this work?
Yeah, so there's going to be, they're going to have to grind some reputation in order to unlock all the tracks. Obviously, the first tracks are supposed to be a little bit easier. So the player is going to open up the Moby Glass. There's going to be a new racing career, and they're going to be able to pay an entry fee to race. And if we have multiple brackets, I don't want to, not too familiar with how many brackets we have, but we definitely have like bronze, silver, gold, platinum. And then depending on where the player, how fast the player finishes the race, he's going to get a time and some credits depending on where he ranked on the bracket. And there's also going to be like a world record to beat that's going to be based on whoever has the fastest record on that track.
He or she. Don't forget the female racers out there. I had my butt kicked by enough of them internally.
My bad.
We do have an overhead a shot, kind of a top down to see the size of this racetrack, don't we? Let's take a look at that. So how big is this? How big are we talking here?
It's very similar to the snake pit. So I think this one's about 10 kilometers, more or less. We have other ones that are bigger, that are about 30 kilometers. This one goes in a loop. So we're going to try to have in the future races that are loops, some that are linear. So we're going to play with that.
Okay, and then we have some footage. We actually have some test footage. One of our cinematic artists, Dave, who is one of the two people who capture all the wonderful B-roll for Inside Star Citizen every week, took some time off and went and ran the races for us. So let's play Dave's race on the Daymar here and take a look at the actual race in action. So again, you take the mission, and then there are actual checkpoints that you have to race through, and they tick off.
Exactly. So we have visual checkpoints, markers right now. Like we see one right there. So once you go through, it's going to show you the next checkpoint that you need to go to. These are going to be very helpful. I would suggest that players, the first few times they do the races, they do them slowly, just to be sure that they not crash. Learn the race, and then after a few turns on the race, you'll be able, after a few laps on the race, you'll be able to do them pretty easily, I think.
Oh.
And I currently hold the world record on this race. It's 1 minute 22 seconds, so it will be the world record until everybody else in the PU gets in there and just destroys me. So
now the world record, you are like one of only 2 people that have actually run this race, though.
A world record is a world record. I mean, Dominic Toretto said it in Fast Furious. It doesn't matter by how much you win. What matters is winning. So, yeah.
Wow, it was just like Vin Diesel was here in the room with us.
Yeah.
It's just like that. Graham, Corrigan, you're seeing much of this for the first time here. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll talk a little bit later about how Quarantine's going to be looking at the flight experience from an audio perspective, and this is another angle on that. And we have to make the ships work in a way that sounds good in all circumstances, and this is a very unique circumstance, but it looks absolutely beautiful. And I think certainly I can't wait till we get our hands on it and start tuning the audio experience to it as well.
I do agree. Yeah, it's going to be a pretty cool piece of work to work on.
Oh, Dave's showing off there with the barrel roll.
Yeah, it's a must in this track. What's important to mention also is these tracks are also going to be, you'll be able to race them at night also. So like we have amazing lighting artists that did some amazing work on these tracks. So whether you're racing daytime or nighttime, there's the experience is going to be different. But I love to see these tracks, how the way they're light up at night, especially the landmark on this one with the fire on top. It looks great. One other thing to know is we did hide some Easter eggs, which are going to be, some are going to be easy to find, other are going to be harder to find because the tracks are so big. We did place a few podiums around the tracks in key locations where we have some nice shots for print screens. So it's going to be up to the players to find those podiums. There's between 1 and 3 podiums hidden per track. So good luck finding them.
Any suitable places for Tusken Raiders to take shots, pot shots at the racers?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's taken every ounce of willpower that I have not to say the line, not to say the thing, because I really want to say the thing. Graham is vibrating. You guys can't see Graham, but Graham is vibrating. Like he definitely wants to say it.
I'm not saying anything.
All right. So that's the Daymar racetrack. This is coming online in Alpha 3.18. It'll have a mission. It'll have checkpoints. I saw some folks in the chat. Folks were asking about the possibility of adding like grandstands or other observation decks to these things. Is there anything like that already at the Daymar racetrack, or is this something we might?
So this one has, I think, I'm not sure if I remember correctly. I think it's a medium landing pad where we saw the landmark location with the fire on top. There is a landing pad there, but I'm not sure the size of the landing pad, and I think we would need to put in a large one so that like maybe a caterpillar can land there with a couple of spectators. So we do want to have nice places where people can land and watch the race.
It's hard. I've got the sound guys here, so I'm going to ask them. Audio is usually very downstream for a lot. So like we're sitting here and we're showing the stuff, and our audio guys are like they're seeing it for the first time right now. That's how downstream they are. Any chance of emulating or mimicking the classic pole position?
It almost feels as though it would be rude not to at this point. So now that you've mentioned it,
sometimes I use my podium to enact policy.
Yeah,
We'll see how it happens. The next race we're going to take a look at, moving from Daymar to Lorville. Let's go ahead and play the Lorville video and take a look at this upcoming racetrack here.
So the Lorville racetrack is actually a community racetrack. I know they had like some racing school stuff going on in there, which I joined to learn how to race a little bit better. This racetrack was worked on by a new level designer named Dane. So this was his onboarding task. We thought it would be good for him to learn the ropes on how to use the layers, submit, how to use perforce, and work with lighting artists and level artists. So it was a good stepping stone for him. It was pretty simple because the racetrack was already made by the community. I think we only changed some minor things. The artists here, they did an amazing job adding more structures. We can also race this one at night. So at night, there's a lot more visible lights, blinking lights. Yeah, it's just one of those iconic racetracks that the community has been racing for a while, and that now they'll be able to race it and earn a little bit of credits doing so.
You mentioned something I'd like to call out. There's a user in the Twitch chat. I think it was Mathox. It's like, if I were the project manager, racing is the last thing I'd be working on. But you make a good point about this was a starter task for a brand new member of the team. It's not everybody that works on Star Citizen is at the same level of involvement, is at the same level of experience, is at the same level of commitment. And a lot of these times when you see these outward things like, oh, why are they on this and also this and also this, it's because you're looking for tasks to fit schedules. You're looking for tasks to fit openings in availabilities. You're looking for tasks that are suitable for the talent and capabilities of folks that you're trying out, and it's like this. So you'll get all kinds of things. You'll get the major things, and you'll get the medium things, and you'll get the little tiny, fun, fluffy things, and all the stuff in between. Especially when you're a project that's 5 studios wide and 800 some odd people strong. So,
but the Montreal team, I think we're 5 or 6 level designers right now, and out of the 5 or 6 level designers, only 2 worked on those tracks. So myself and Dane. So we have other level designers working constantly on other things which are not racing specific. But yeah, everybody has their own opinion on what we should be working on.
Yes. Let's take a look at the overhead for this track here. So comparatively speaking, how big are we talking?
Oh man, that would be a question for Dane. I don't know the size, the exact size of this track, but we're also hovering, I think, around 18 to 20 checkpoints. So it's these are, I'd say, are small to medium sized tracks. We're gonna explore larger tracks when we have more power from level art. We're gonna dibble into larger tracks, yeah.
Okay, and of course our racer internal Dave here made a pass at racing the Lorville track. Let's take a look at that while we continue to talk here. So where does this start? Do you know where this starts?
Well, whoever raced the Lorville Gateways track before, which was renamed into Lorville Outskirts now, it's the same exact start position. So it's behind the CBD building. We can see it right there. So
okay.
The start point is right behind the CBD building. It's a very straightforward track. There's a few turns, and then there's a couple of straight lines. It looks good. It feels good. Checkpoints help a lot. We're right now, so we're at the phase where we're just polishing the checkpoints, where we want the checkpoints to lead the players a little bit better into the turns.
Yeah.
And
You touched on something. It's a good point to make now. These racetracks are going to be very new to most people, but for folks who have been part of like the XGR racing scene or whatnot, who may have raced these tracks historically, they may be used to them by a very specific route or used to them by a very specific name. When we incorporate these into the Precision universe and bring them in, there will often be changes that are made to the route or the way you process through. That's why we have level designers that go through, like, trying to improve it where they can, but keep the same essence and feeling. The same will also happen with the names. So some of the racetracks will maintain the same name that some folks may already be familiar with. Some of the racetracks will be renamed in line with certain fictions that the narrative team are designing around the racetrack to better incorporate them with pre-existing aspects of the lore, or aspects of the lore that you guys may not be aware of just yet. So
exactly.
just a heads up, so there's no surprises.
Yeah, I can touch up a little bit more on that.
Okay.
The reason why we changed the name for Lorville Gateways to Lorville Outskirts is because Lorville does have gateways around the city. So we just wanted to be sure that for new players, they don't think that this is a race around the gateways of Lorville. So those are the kind of things we look at. I think there was our narrative guys that looked at when they were finding names. We do try to keep the names consistent, and we also, in terms of gameplay, that's what's kind of hard on this project, is we're working on these tracks in secret, but we also need to figure out a way on how we can keep the essence of the gameplay that was intended by the community when they created these tracks. How do we keep that intact? So, like I mentioned before, there is like a racing school on Discord, and then I had to join that racing school and pretend like I didn't know. I had questions to ask, and I was like, oh, so how would you rank this track? Is it hard, medium? And then I'd ask them a couple of questions about different tracks just to see where they would place them in terms of difficulty. And we have to find like sneaky ways to like infiltrate their Discords and ask questions without them knowing exactly what we're working on. So that's one of the ways we went about to like figure out the difficulties of each of the tracks and where we should rank them and when they should unlock.
Shady Nino going undercover into the Discords. You never know. People just go into a Discord that you never know who's going to be lurking in there.
The things we do for the games we love.
This is such a cool track.
It is. It's one of my favorite tracks. Yadar Valley, the new one, is my new favorite track, but this one's up there.
All right. So with that, let's take a look at the third track. Now, the third track, we don't have a top-down view because it just looked like a bunch of clouds. But the third track comes to a Crusader outside Horizon on the platforms and stuff. So let's take a look at that and see what we're working with here.
Sounds good. So this one was named the Kaplan Stadium before, which I'm not sure why it was named Stadium, because it's not a stadium. We changed the name to Kaplan Circuit. This one was definitely a learning experience for us. We had a lot of trouble. It was a community track too, and we had a lot of trouble adapting the community track to the needs of the time trial races. The main problems, there was a big turn midway through the track where the players needed to do like 4 180 turns very close by, one after another in a fold. And we had issues because of the new player experience. How do we show to the player that they actually need to do this very complicated flying maneuver? We also, each one of our checkpoints needed to have some kind of physical asset to represent the checkpoints. So we just had a lot of trouble. It's a floating city. It's already existing. It already has a purpose, which is to be a shipping lane. So we needed to figure out a way on how we could incorporate an official racetrack into an existing shipping platform, which was definitely a challenge. And how do we do it without breaking the immersion of the shipping platform, but also suggesting that there is like this double life, that it's lived there by racers and shipping, and that it's somewhat organized. So this one was a hard one to bring to life. It's definitely a learning experience for us. Yeah, it was fun. It was definitely a challenge. It was fun to work on. So we had to change things from the community track that was there before, but hopefully we did a good job.
Let's take a look at Dave's final time trial here. I had a look at it earlier, and he definitely seems a little more timid in his racing on this track compared to on the Lorville and Daymar tracks. Dave's not here to defend himself right now, but I know he watches. But
we actually had this track be the first one to unlock. I'm not sure if that's going to be the case, because it does have a higher level of complexity, especially here where you need to do these slaloms in between these posts. So I'm not sure where we're going to rank this track for the release, but we're still trying to determine the difficulties and the order in which they need to unlock.
And of course, wherever they rank at release doesn't mean that we won't adjust it or change it, later on.
Oh yeah, in the future, all these will change, yeah. Because we're also testing our reputation system right now. So the tracks the way we've set them up now is also to test the reputation system. It's definitely not going to be like this in the end, yeah.
What flight mode is he in here? It's too small, I can't see.
Definitely not uncoupled.
Come on, Dave. Oh my God.
But yeah, it's been great, because when I did the snake pit, it was I had to do a lot of the art placement myself. So for these tracks, we had a lot of help from artists that did an amazing job to guide the player better. There's definitely a big step up from snake pit to the new racetracks. We had level artists, lighting artists. We had some people from VFX look at these. I'm really happy with the job they've done. I know I'm the one that's presenting the tracks for the whole team, but there's a lot more people that worked on these, and I think everybody did a great job. It was also great working with the EU team, because they initially did the Kaplan, not the Kaplan, the Horizon City.
Mm-hmm.
Our first iteration of the track, I think we completely butchered their intentions of the silhouettes and how Horizon is. So it was great also to have their feedback and see what they're saying, and then let us go through with this and see how we could bring it to the next level, and taking their feedback into consideration. So it's been really fun to work with MFT, the artists, the people from EUPU. It's been a blast to make these, and we've actually made these tracks pretty fast. They only came, we started working on them not too long ago, so I mean, it's a nice added little bonus to 318.
I'm having some serious episode 1 racer flashbacks right now. Like, this looks so cool.
I think for me to see this kind of thing, because when we're working day to day, we find ourselves working on these little micro experiences and fixing things in very small areas of the game, and just to see something more holistic like this and see how beautiful it is, and how the lighting all affects it, and it really is. It reminds us what we're working on sometimes, because sometimes we can get our heads so deep into the nitty-gritty detail of what we're doing.
Yeah, it's one of the one of the common misconceptions, or not even misconceptions, but one of the assumptions rather, is that ISC and SCL is just made for the community. But one of the most common messages I get, almost every other day, is from developers who learn about, some feature, some development that's going on in this very large product from the show, because I get messages like, hey, who is the guy who was talking about this thing? Because they want to message him because that person is working on something that might be able to help them with their work and stuff like this. So it's SCL and ISE is also a terrific internal tool for helping the teams just know who else is working on what. So Nemanja, thank you so much for taking the time to share some of the community racetracks. Any final words, anything you want to leave the community before we let you go and get on with the audio, folks?
No, I'm just very happy with how these turned out. I'm happy I had the chance to work with some new teams. I'm happy that I had the chance to work with the racing community itself. I just wanted to bring one point up before we go. We realized that most of these tracks are from the XGR community, but we're definitely open to working with other people. Like I know it's been on my list to talk to the people from scr.gg more and get their feedback on the racetracks and everything. I just want people to know that we're open to talking with the community. I'm on Discord, so if anybody wants to, come chat with me, share ideas, we're open to collaborate with a lot of people. That's all.
Spoken like a true bought and paid for developer, Nemanja.
Thanks.
All right, so that's it for Community Racetracks. We're going to take a short break and take a look at a community video that was this year's first place winner in the Day of the Vara contest. I know it's it is November 11th now, but we didn't get a chance to play it when we missed last week's show. So take a look at this year's first place winner in the Day of the Vara contest, and when we come back, we'll have Graham and Corrington. We'll talk all things audio here. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
The party starts in an hour, you know.
I know. This won't take long.
Day of the Vara at Ghost Hollow. Spooky. The scavengers haven't been nice to her. Are they still around?
Nah, scans didn't show anything.
So what are we doing here exactly? Anything of value has been stripped ages ago.
It's not about that. I want to see the remains of Major Washburn with my own eyes. It's one of those bucket list things, you know.
You mean the pilot who went insane and crashed the ship, killing everyone on board? He's some kind of hero of yours?
More like morbid curiosity. Up there. And there's more to the story. Washburn didn't just settle killing the crew. Oh no. He stabbed his crewmates in their sleep.
So what happened to the remains?
Wildlife? Who knows?
Okay, so the dude went insane. So what?
You know where Ghost Hollow was returning from?
Salvage operation?
Hades.
Come on, you can't seriously expect me to believe you.
Believe what you want. Mr. Washburn, I presume.
Well, he isn't going anywhere.
Yeah, well, this one is ticked for me. We should head back. To the ship! Up there, fast! No! Please don't! Trick or treat, Bruno. Kevin. Kevin, you son of a... And Lucas, you were in this the whole time? It was his idea, actually. Jeez, I need new pants. Happy Day of the Vara. God damn you.
and that was the first place winner of this year's Vara Trick or Treat contest from Star Citizen Bewater, who is totally normal and adjusted and not crying out for help at all. Remember that the new Star Citizen Live loves and desperately needs your video content to help us with the scene changes between the first and the second half. So you can submit your videos for possible potential inclusion in Star Citizen Live up on the Community Hub. We're looking for commercials. We're looking for short-form narrative adventures. We're looking for anything that might provide just a little bit of a respite and a little bit of insight into the Star Citizen community and the things that you find interesting or funny or scary, as the case may be. So yeah, Community Hub. Check that out, robertspaceindustries.com/community hub, I think. Joining us on the second half of the show, people who were here on the first half of the show, Graham Corrington. Welcome back.
Hello.
Hello.
So it has been a while since we've had anybody from the audio team on. Graham, of course, you've moved up the corporate ladder a little bit since the last time we've had you on. What is it that you do for Star Citizen now?
So I'm now Director of Audio Technology. So I try to, I mean, the name Director feels an odd thing to me, but yeah, I'm doing what I've always done, basically try to make the right decisions for the technology, for the audio technology in the game. And now I get to do it from a slightly fancier place. So
you do have our offices are actually right next to each. Well, your office, I'm out in the pit, but they're right next to each other. So you have a very nice office with a lovely view now, Mr. Director, fancy person. And Corrington, what is it that you do for Star Citizen?
So I'm a technical sound designer. So basically, I'm taking care of all the interaction between the sound and the game. So basically, making things that already sound cool sound even cooler in the game, reacting to the environment and the player's action, for example. And
Graham mentioned earlier that one of the things that you're working on is flight experience stuff.
Yes.
Talk to me about that work.
So we realized that we had all these ships, and the game is quite old now, so first ships were using like some sort of older technology, all the other systems that we were developing at that time. And the further we went on, these systems evolved as well, and the requirements and the needs for the game changes as well. So now my work would be to take the state of all the ships, seeing what works best and what doesn't work, and basically just make it all sound consistent and great, and giving players the wow effect that sometimes I think we kind of lack on ship flight.
The game is quite old now. Send your letters to Corrington, care of 6 Manchester Goods Yard, Manchester M34. I don't know what the zip code is. So when you're looking at the stuff like the races and stuff, how would your work potentially intersect with what we were just looking at?
Yeah, really great stuff, the races. But so what I think now is, we have different places. Players can be in different missing words now. Like context. Thank you. Yeah, context. Player can be, and races will be a big context, and it needs to have that little thing in addition to the normal flight, maybe to really make it cinematic, more cinematic, like really giving the player the feel of speed and danger, maybe because you can crash, of course. So yeah, that's really something we have to consider when working on that different context player can be in.
Yeah, for a game as huge as Star Citizen, we have a lot of context to deal with, and we try to come up with as many systemic solutions so that things just work and people can throw features into the game and we don't even know about them, and they just work from an audio perspective. But something like racing is a unique thing where what you're interested in is all happening very much in the cockpit and in that narrow path ahead of you. And systemic solutions don't really sort of focus on that quite so much. So giving Corrington some tools and his team some tools to allow us to.
Yeah, I'm thinking about those racing movies that I grew up with and stuff. And you would often hear the as you're hitting turn after turn after turn, the creaking of the hull, the ship, the car, in the case of these movies, but the little rattling of nuts and bolts that are steadily loosening as the race goes on and stuff. I think there's a lot of opportunity. If you can identify that, okay, the ship is racing now, to add a systemic solution that can make it seem orally different from any other activity that you're doing.
That's exactly what I'm working on right now, like some sort of new vibration system that would reflect these kind of things. These really stress on the ship, these or sometimes no stress at all, and depending on the brand as well. So yeah, this is all going to be into the huge rework that we're doing. So it's going to be really amazing. And also, I'm just thinking now, races can also be for an external perspective. So we need to also take care of like flybys and passbys, and what if you are in a crowd just watching the race? What's the sound going to be like? So that's also one thing we have to consider.
Now we're talking about systemic sound and procedural sound and stuff like this, and I have to bring up the last time we really had you on for any kind of extended talk. We were talking about Claudius at last year's CitizenCon. We haven't heard anything. We haven't gone back and touched on this. So because we know the only constant in game development is change, I'm just gonna flat out ask, and I don't know the answer when I'm asking this. Is Claudius still a thing? Have we abandoned it for Oedipus and moved on to whatever?
I certainly hope not. No, Claudius is definitely Claudius is definitely still a thing. It's a hugely ambitious thing to do. We have over 20,000 audio triggers triggered by our game. They all come from different places, they all come from different tools. And Claudius is an attempt to bring all that stuff together so it can all interact in ways that are natural. But obviously, when we're talking about taking 20,000 audio triggers and all the code that drives how they play, and we're shifting it all into a new tool, without exception, everything is moving into this thing. It is ambitious. I knew it was ambitious when we started it. I'm only now realizing that it was more ambitious than I even realized at the time. But it wouldn't be Star Citizen if it wasn't ambitious. And yes, we are definitely progressing really well on it. All the sound designers who see it are very excited about what it does. And we're just trying to get over that hill. We're looking under all the rugs and finding all the cases that it doesn't quite suit just yet, and figuring out ways around those. And once we're over all those little humps, we'll be much closer.
So are there, we talk about these new tools, and they're in various stages of development. Like at the same CitizenCon, we debuted Rastar, which is a tool that the designers and the level designers are using to plot stuff. They are now actively using Rastar to begin to play stuff. It's still very work in progress. The interface is still, I believe the exact word I was told was jank, but they're using it now to place the 35 outposts that are going to 318, and to start placing outposts throughout the Pyro system now. Is Claudius, even though it's still in development and still work in progress, is it actively in use anywhere? Is there anything we're currently creating with it?
It's not yet, because the way we've approached it is we want to first port over a lot of the stuff that already exists, because introducing a new system, we ideally don't want to be running the old system in parallel. Now, there may be cases where that has to be done in order for us to get releases out and start fixing issues and things like that. But one thing we can't afford with that approach is anything janky, especially at runtime. So we need our new solution, to at least match everything that's already there before we allow it out into the wild, because we don't want to degrade the experience. We only want to improve it.
It's interesting you say, because we can't afford anything janky. It's going to be the word for today. Is janky. There's an interesting dichotomy between the visual and the audio. People will watch a movie in 4K, in 2K, in 1080p. Broadcast television is 720p. DVD, which used to be, blow all our minds, it's 480p. Old school broadcast television we started on was like 240, and sometimes, once we used to black and white TV, messing with the rabbit ears, trying to get a signal. Watching semi-scrambled channels when we're young. Anyway, people will suffer through and accept all manner of visual quality, but when it comes to audio quality, the second something sounds wrong, the second something sounds off, the second something becomes remotely uncomfortable, like they're out, they're gone.
Yeah, absolutely. There are two things that make people notice the audio. One is that it's completely awesome, like a huge singularity explosion or something like that. And the other thing is when something's not quite right. And that is the big problem that we're up against when, like I say, we've got to make sure that everything we do doesn't break anything that isn't already broken. And yeah, you're absolutely right. If things don't sound right, the brain is very quick to notice. Whereas visually, if things don't quite look right, there are definitely...
It's not just notice, though. It's a level of tolerance.
Yeah.
Though it's if the flippin' Pisces, the back door on the Pisces had a texture problem, and the door was made white, and then sometimes it shows up green, and it's not supposed. The back door on the Pisces is not supposed to be white. It hasn't supposed to be white, whatever. It's a visual problem, but it goes on the bug list, and people tolerate it, and people still fly the Pisces around. It's also getting fixed. It's fixed in the next patch, by the way. But it's easy to tolerate. But if the Pisces was making a weird noise that just hit at this grating frequency, it's like I can't spend more than 10 seconds anywhere near it. It's just that weird. I know you're a programmer and you're a designer. Maybe this is way over. But does this phenomenon have a name? Do we know what this is? Why this difference is that we absolutely won't tolerate? Pete, do you know?
All I know is that people notice bad audio.
People notice bad audio. I realized we had the audio guy there. I could just ask him. But
I guess if you want a visual analogy, it's kind of like the uncanny valley. It's that sense of discomfort you feel when something's almost as it should be, but not quite, and you start to feel a little nauseous because it's not quite right. And I think that sensation that you get from audio, I think much more easily.
And yes, as Chad has figured out when I was talking about the scrambled cable channels, I was talking about bionukes specifically. Shout out to bionukes. So right now, in addition to Calliope, you guys are teams all throughout the Manchester teams are moving into the new building. Your guys' area is a bit different than everybody else's. You guys got this crazy. We can't show pictures yet. We'll show pictures and video when it's all ready. We want to present the whole thing like. But you guys got these great sound design rooms. There's 6, 8 of them, 10 of them.
12.
There's 12 of them.
12.
There's 12 of them, and they're huge by comparison to the last studio. Now you can do surround sound and stuff. Talk to me about the new facility here.
So the new facility, from our perspective, isn't complete because building an audio room is not the same as building a huge high-rise office building, and we had to get a different set of contractors in to build those rooms out properly. But you're absolutely right. The rooms we've got now are they're usable. They're huge in comparison to the old ones, and that size. There's a real sense of claustrophobia, I think, in the old rooms, and that's gone away. And there's a sense of space, and with that sense of space, you can have a real surround setup that is comfortable and makes sense for the kind of work that we're trying to do.
That was a big thing. I know because every time we do an audio show, people ask about surround sound, about the game being mixed for surround sound and stuff like this. And it's always been we have limited facilities because they were so small. But now this is going to make a big change for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And myself personally having a slightly fancier office now. I'm going to say slightly. That's not true. But it's not just about having a nice room for myself. I've actually got room to test in surround now, which is something I didn't have before out on the floor.
Paul 54734, shout out to the username, says, "Is this actually live?" Yes, but next week's is not. In addition to the new facilities and everything, the reason I mention it is because there's a major expansion for the audio team underway here. I've seen more new faces, come through in the last couple of weeks than I think I've seen at any point. Talk to me about this expansion. What are you guys doing?
Well, we're working towards painting all of the audio onto Squadron 42. There's plenty in there already, but there's a heck of a lot of work to be done. And we need to continue to maintain Star Citizen while that's ongoing. And we've recently been through a lot of planning, and that gave us a clear understanding of just how much work there is. And we've gone to the execs, and we've been given the green light to grow our team, potentially quadruple our team from where it was like a year ago. And that's something that we've kind of asked for in the past, but just by doing the analysis on it and realizing just how small we are compared to the company as a whole, we've been able to open up a lot of positions. We're looking for sound designers at all levels. We're looking for a couple of audio programmers. We're looking for technical sound designers. We have a new position called audio rigger, which is someone who goes in and takes sounds and implements them in the game. So they're kind of like an implementer role without so much of the design side. But we have vacancies across the board, and that's mostly just because we're trying to see out these projects.
It's anybody who's followed the project for a while and the audio episodes, they know that audio is a very downstream team, and a downstream team, for lack of a better explanation, means that almost everybody else has to do their work before the downstream teams can do theirs. It's when you're trying to create a sound that has to match a mood, that has to match the size of a thing. They can't be changing the size. They can't be changing the mood. Visually, it's like all these things need to be in place before you paint is the word. I like to use that word, before you do that final painting with sound at the end. So to hear that we're now scaling the audio team up in order so that they can start their work, really painting, in the Squadron 42. I'm not saying the thing. I'm just going to reiterate the things that you're saying and let people make their own determinations from that. So yeah, what else do we got? We're just about out of time. We've talked Claudius. We've talked the sound design for the flight experience. We talked the new office. We did the shout out for hiring because your team is growing by nearly 4 times. Is there anything else we need to cover?
I mean, what do you want to know? We got we're not just on Claudius. We've got from a tech perspective, we've got propagation system, which I've talked about again in the past, and it is so close to being ready. So we'll be presenting that at some point very soon, I think. People can see what that's doing for us, and again, that's with a view to trying to close out some work. It's about streamlining the sound designer's experience. So a lot of the tech that we're coming up with within both audio code and tech sound design is really focused on allowing the sound designers to be pure sound designers and not spend all their time implementing and not spend all their time working on level markup and things like this. So we have a lot of tech that we've been working on for a long time. I hold my hands up, but we are so close to getting these things out now. And I think they're going to really sort of free up a lot of sound designer time.
It wouldn't be a show with the audio team if I didn't ask about VoIP. Anything you can tell us about the future of VoIP? Are we happy with it? Does it need work? Is there any work on the horizon we can talk about?
It needs work, and there is work in the backlog, currently unscheduled, but there is work to... we want to make the VoIP experience a bit more rounded, so we want remote players to not just hear the voice of the player that they're hearing. What we want them to hear as if there was a mic in the location of that person. So we're going to pick up more of the surrounding sound. If somebody opens a VoIP call and doesn't say anything, you're going to hear the ships going past them. You're going to hear the ambience of Grimhex if that's where they're stood and things like this. So we want to work on that definitely. We want to work on the way the voices sound as well. We need to do a little bit more tuning on. The whole experience is growing. We're getting more AIs in a lot of locations and things like that, and that's affecting the mix. And we need to think about the VoIP mix as well, because it's really important that you can hear the people talking to you, but not lose all the ambience around you at the same time. So yes, there's work on the way for VoIP.
Well, anybody that's worked in the LA studio can attest to how your lives are about to change now that I'm here. And whatnot. It's you won't be able to escape me nearly as much as possible. So I know we said on the backlog and currently unscheduled, but it's maybe if I ask enough times, maybe we can get that schedule.
If
Maybe
people-
after we grow the team, maybe after we grow the team times 4.
Yeah, exactly.
If we grow the team times 4, maybe we can get that backlog stuff scheduled. So yeah, that's it for this episode of Star Citizen Live. Thank you everybody for hanging out with us for another hour at the end of our week. Remember, if you haven't checked it out, Inside Star Citizen yesterday had a great look at the upcoming convention center for this year's Intergalactic Aerospace Expo, the 35 new derelict outposts being added with Alpha 318, and another look at the Outlaw space stations coming in the upcoming 4.0, as well as 3 other racetracks that we didn't talk about today, coming to Area 18, Euterpe, and Yila. So between that show and this show, we got 6 brand new racetracks coming out in the next big patch in December. So you want to check that out. And then, of course, next week, we sort of just touched on it, the Intergalactic Aerospace Expo 2952, the biggest in-game event of the year. It's the chance to see and experience almost, I have to say almost, every single ship and vehicle in the Star Citizen universe. There are some weird outliers that aren't involved in it, and if you want, hit up this, we'll see if I can't get the Star Citizen Twitter to maybe ask the question, see if people can figure out which ships aren't involved, because it's a lot shorter, a lot easier to, or harder rather, to list the ones that aren't than the ones that are. But yeah, that begins next Friday, at a date that I can't think of right now, maybe the 18th or 19th. That sounds about 7-ish days from now. Come on back to Inside Star Citizen next week. It's the first of 2 weeks of Intergalactic Aerospace Expo shows, where we'll be talking about the 600i rework, a neat introduction to Drake Interplanetary for folks who may not know our sponsors of this year's event, and the introduction of a new spacecraft that I'm not going to spoil right now because I get in enough trouble. And then come on back here next Friday for a brand new Star Citizen Live Intergalactic Aerospace Expo spectacular roundtable with members from the vehicle content teams, the vehicle experience teams, the vehicle feature teams, the vehicle design teams. We got a big old thing coming. That'll be next Friday right here for Star Citizen Live in a new format with a new thing, and I'm really... It's been the end of a long week. So, for Star Citizen Live, that's Graham and that's Corentin, and we already said goodbye to Nemanja. Thank you so much for hanging out with us this week, and we'll see you next week. Take care. Oh, wait. Come back. I forgot. Somebody in the chat was asking, hey, these racetracks, they look cool at during the day and everything, but what about at night? What about how cool they are at night? Well, enjoy this look at the 3 tracks at night, and then we'll see you next week. Bye, everybody.